Hello, Frizzle Factorial. It is time for a mid-year check-in. First, I'm going to cover my big numbers, like how many books have I read so far this year, and how many of those books did I actually finish? What are my star rating stats and things like that? And then I'm going to be getting into the awards, the best books, the worst books, all of those. And then we're going to be getting into the nitty-gritty of the fun stats. I've had so much fun compiling all these graphs and stats because I'm such a math nerd. We're going to be taking deep dives into things like the genres and the book tones, the best and worst books according to the Goodreads average ratings, and much more. So strap in, let's go talking about all the fun books that I've read so far in 2024. So first up, so far I have read 78 books this year, and here are all of those organized by star rating. I don't have any particular I need to read this many books goal attached to this. I'm just reading at the pace that I want to be reading at, and that is 78 books. So now let's look at a more customized chart. This is a Gantt chart of my reading. So on the x-axis is a timeline where we're going from left to right is through this 6 months of the year. And then every line is a book, and that's color-coded by what I rated it, with red being the 1 stars, purple being 2 stars, blue is 3 stars, teal is 4 stars, and green is 5 stars. So one of the cool things about this is that you can both see what I rated every book and how long every book took me to read. And from this you can also see that I'm typically reading about 2 books at a time. I typically have an ebook and an audiobook going. The total number of pages I read is 25,567. And that includes the pages that I read inside books that I didn't finish. So talking about pages, one of the interesting things to me is okay, what are the longest and shortest books I've read so far this year? So the 6 longest books and what I rated them are Gemina with 672 pages, Illuminate, same series, with 608 pages. The Book That Wouldn't Burn with 571 pages. The Winter Sea with 526 pages. Freedom and Necessity, where I read 518 pages before giving up, but the actual book had 691 pages. And Ocean's Echo with 464. So of these books, I think there's only 2 of them that I feel like were too long. The Winter Sea and Freedom and Necessity. Obviously, I couldn't even make it through that book because it was so long and dragging. The 6 shortest books I read were Once We Flew, 74 pages, Memento, 84 pages, Even Though I Knew the End, 136, Demon Daughter with 153 pages, When Among Crows with 171, and Witness for the Dead with 240. I haven't read all that many novellas. We even get into novel territory there, but I definitely love some good novellas. We also have the books that I personally read at the fastest rate. So those go to the book I've read the very fastest all year, Taming Demon for Beginners, then Slaying Monsters for the Feeble, yes, that same series, the next book, then The Rom-Commers, The Golden Enclaves and The Last Graduate, again, in the same series, and Delivering Evil for Experts, again, in the same series as Taming Demons for Beginners. This makes a lot of sense to me because there's some authors that I can read so fast, like these 2 series that have repeats, and Catherine Center, who also had the fastest book that I read last year. So definitely something very bingeable about all of these authors' crafts. Then the books that I read the slowest go to, the very slowest being Once We Flew, then Every Which Way But Dead, Blunt Force Magic, Magical Hazmat, Finder, and The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And yes, I see the great irony that I read that book very slowly, and that was because I wished that it would hurry up a little bit. And definitely being on the slow pace side of things doesn't necessarily mean that I didn't love the book. You can see we've got some 4-star, 5 stars here. It's just some books I like to take my time with. So now let's talk about my star rating distributions. Here is my star rating distributions of all the books I've read so far in 2024. I really love this bell curve shape that's peaking at 4 stars. I think that is a great way to be reading. Or I'm definitely willing to give out the 1 stars and the 2 stars. I'm not stingy about those, but also I'm giving out plenty of 4 stars, and when a book deserves it, a 5 star. Now this has a goal attached to it because I've been trying so hard for years to get my average star rating up. And my goal right now is to beat last year, which is a 3.35 average star rating. And guess what I'm at right now? I am at a 3.42. I am not only above this average star rating, but like above it almost an entire 1/10 of a point, which I know when I say out loud it doesn't sound like that much, but it feels like a big accomplishment. And a lot of this is down to different projects that I've been doing, which I'll get more into near the end of the video when we're getting more into the nitty-gritties. So look at that, we have crossed the goal line. I'm so excited about this, and I'm hoping that my reading for the second half of the year will go just as well, and I'll be able to keep this up. Because I'm just finding books that I love, which is the whole goal of everything. Now, on a somewhat less positive note, let's talk about the books that I DNF'd, that I did not finish. So I'm a firm believer of, if you're not liking a book, don't finish it. Like, we have too little time in this world to be wasting it on books that we're not even enjoying. So 16.7% of my reading has been DNFs. And I also have a goal attached to this, is that I want all of my 1 and 2 star books to be DNF. Like, if I'm feeling 1 or 2 star about a book, I don't want to be finishing that book. But sometimes that's hard to give up on a book that you've invested time into, you've got an emotional connection to it, you're thinking it might get better, and I do that all the time. I want to get the slice of the pie that's brown over here, that is books I hated but finished shrinking. And it is. Last year, my hated but still finished books was 4.2% of my reading, and this year it's 3.8%, so I am doing better. And part of the reason that I'm doing better is I've started a new stat tracking project in my reading that I'm so excited to present to you guys. When I'm reading a book, when I get to 10% in, so I've just read a 1/10 of the book, I predict what my final star rating is going to be. I make myself put it into the spreadsheet of, here, when I've read 10% of this book, I'm feeling 4 stars about this one. I'm feeling 2 stars about this one. And that act of making myself check in and having to admit to myself, yeah, I feel like this book's gonna be 2 stars, has also helped me acknowledge that and get better at DNFing books. So, yay! Would recommend. But the reason that I'm tracking this is I'm so interested in how accurately can I predict the final rating of a book when I'm only 10% in. So, here we go. I am spot on, this blue percent of the pie, 63% of the time. So over half, but it's not nothing. But the even more interesting part of this pie is only 6% of the time, this brown slice, the book A Pleasant Surprise, where I predict it's going to be 3 stars and it's actually 4 stars, where the rating surpasses my prediction. 31% of the time, the book is a disappointment, where at 10% in, I predict it's going to be 5 stars or 4 stars, and then it ends up being lower. Here's a more thorough look at that data and how it breaks down, where the x-axis here is my 10% prediction, and the y-axis is my final rating of the book. Then the bigger the circle is, the more data points are falling at that node. So we've got this blue line through the middle here, where that is where I'm spot on. I guess 3, it is 3. And then below that line is the disappointments, and above that line is the pleasant surprises. So as you can see, the pleasant surprises do not come that often. They're kind of once in a blue moon thing. And also getting this data has further motivated me to DNF more, because like there's always that thought in the back of my head of like, but what if this book gets better? And then I can look at this data and be like, no, Chloe, the book only gets better 6% of the time. And it's probably not gonna happen for this book, and you should just give up on it. So that's been pretty motivating and honestly inspiring. Some of the fun takeaways of this is, so far at least, I haven't picked up a book and thought, wow, this is going to be 1 star. There's always at least something in there. I think for me, 1 star is a real mark of me absolutely hating a book, and I kind of have to work up to that hatred. Like 2 stars, like I didn't like it, but I could be just apathetic about it, but like 1 star, you gotta work up to that. So I've never yet felt 1 star about a book at 10%. I also find it interesting that none of the pleasant surprises have come from a 2-star prediction. That's only ever been 2 stars or lower. Part of that is because I'm DNFing a book, is because maybe the ending would have made it 3 stars, but I'm not getting there. And I understand that that's a hole in this data set, but like I am not going to plug that hole. The entire purpose of this project is to DNF more. But routinely, I'll guess a book is 2 stars at 10%, and I'll keep chugging on for a while to see if it gets better, and then, you know, give up at like 70% instead. Or get all the way to the end, as I did for 3.8% of my books. So now we get to the part that maybe you've all been waiting for, which is the award show of what are the best and most disappointing books that I've read so far. Let's talk about all of my new 5 stars of the year. I'm going to be talking about these in the order that I read them. And if any of these books sound like they're up your alley, I highly recommend all of them. First up, we got 2 in the same series, which is With a Golden Sword and To the Bloody End. This is a trilogy. I read book 1 last year, also gave that 5 stars. So this series I highly recommend to lovers of both urban fantasy, especially urban fantasy focusing on tricky fae magic. The series follows a charismatic, tender, and cutthroat protagonist who is a fairy changeling, and she is struggling to cling to life, magic, and respectability as her world gets turned upside down. Love it. Highly recommend. The next 5-star goes to Ocean's Echo. This is a sci-fi romance novel, character internal struggle focused. We are following 2 guys as they go on a space exploration mission. One of them wants to be there and cares about the mission, and one of them doesn't want to be there and has been forced. And then they're forced to work together, and you get to see them both fall in love and slowly acclimatize to each other, and also deal with all of these sticky political situations that come out around their expedition. If you love character-focused sci-fi and you want some nice closed-door sci-fi romance, highly recommend Ocean's Echo. I'm obsessed with this one. Then we have The Book That Wouldn't Burn. This is a high fantasy book that's very interested in both the world building of a infinite magical library and dealing with themes of both prejudice and coming of age through a character-focused lens. I felt like this book was fascinating and compelling and had me hooked all the way through. I cared about the world, I cared about the characters, I cared about the plot, and it was just so solid and recommended for fans of dense, epic fantasy. Then, The Goblin Emperor. This is also a dense fantasy, but it's so character-focused, where you are following a teenage boy who is suddenly the emperor of the elf kingdom. The catch is that he is half goblin. So despite being the heir to this throne, he isn't very accepted by the people of the kingdom due to goblin racism. He's so a fish out of water, feeling like he's friendless and directionless, and this book is him scrambling to find his place and his confidence. It's very slow-paced. It doesn't hold your hand with the world building. It gets pretty confusing pretty quick, but what is constant and easy to grab onto is this intense character study, and I loved it. Switching gears to a very different vibe, then we have Taming Demons for Beginners, which is a paranormal romance series. We are following a quiet bookworm girl who accidentally makes a deal with a hot demon. And the book series is her and this demon trying to adjust to each other in their lives, trying to form an alliance even though they don't always have the kindest feelings towards each other or understand where the other one is coming from. And then with a plot braided through that of a slow burn romance and also various action, adventure, mysteries that they're solving. I loved this series. There's 4 books, and the only one of those that I gave 5 stars was the first one, which did it so well. Then we've got a novella, When Among Crows. This was such a fun surprise for me. I went in with middling expectations where there's things that I've loved by this author before and things that I hated. And this book, it's my favorite of her work so far. This is an urban fantasy with roots in Polish folklore. It has such strong atmosphere where it's taking place over the course of a night where we have a man on a mission. He wants an audience with Baba Yaga. And then him and some sidekicks and partners he picks up along the way are going across the city trying to find her lair and get an audience with her. And along the way you get to discover why he wants this audience so bad, and you get really intricate character studies of him and also his sidekicks. All of them were just done so delicately. The exposition is so well paced. I love how this story has moments of fun action and moments of really intricate contemplation. As with all the books I gave 5 stars, I'm obsessed with it. And as we will explore later in this video, it doesn't have the best average rating, but I really hope it finds its people because I'm so glad that it found me. And then we have another series, which is A Deadly Education, and the second book, The Last Graduate. I didn't give the final book in the trilogy 5 stars. I gave it 4, but Still very much recommend this series. These books are following a teenage girl named Elle, and she has a gift for magic of mass destruction. This book takes place at a deadly magic boarding school where she is just struggling to learn to get a handle on her magic, struggling to even graduate alive, and also struggling to make friends because she gives off quite the aura of I am the Dark Lord in training. And I loved her prickly personality. I loved the conflict it created between her and the other characters. I loved following her journey. I loved the magic system. So, very fun books, especially if you like a prickly main character. So those were all of the new 5 stars I got this year. Let's give a quick shout out to my rereads of the year. The first reread was Falcon. This is a sci-fi book by one of my favorite authors of all time. And there's 2 parts of this book. One where we're following a prince struggling to keep a handle on his planet's political environment and fight for the people while not fighting against his family. And the other half where we are following a spaceship pilot doing one last job before he retires and getting stuck in a political mess. And I love this book with my whole heart. It's a masterpiece. It's beautiful. And if you want more details about it, I've got a reading vlog where I'm blabbing on a lot. Next reread was by that same author, Finder, which is an urban fantasy about a guy who has the magical ability to find lost objects. And he gets entangled in a police investigation about a murder and a drug ring, trying to use his powers to help. Another reread I had was When Among Crows. I read it, I gave it 5 stars. A week later, I was thinking, I want to read that book again. So I did. Gets the honor of the only book I've read twice this year. Then we also have Howl's Moving Castle, which I read like a decade ago for the first time. And then just this month, I read it with my patron book club. Very fun. So then let us now talk about my biggest disappointments. I'm not going to talk about every book I didn't like because we'd be here a while and that would just bring down the fun feeling. But I do want to save a space for the books that I was really looking forward to and then let me down. So one of those is The Book That Broke the World. As you might remember, the first book in this series, I gave 5 stars and I loved it. And then this one, 2 stars. 2 stars. And a lot of the reason for that is because I felt like book 1 really balanced the character-focused coming-of-age plot lines and the world-building thematic exploration really well. This book was just like all world-building thematic exploration and very little character focus, and I was very bored and uninvested. Next disappointment, Freedom and Necessity. A book by one of my favorite authors of all time, but this one was just like bloated, way too long, boring. Ugh. If this book had just been like 200 pages shorter, could have really loved it, but I couldn't make it through. It was too much. Next disappointment, The Last Murder at the End of the World. This is a murder mystery that has a speculative sci-fi elements, and the premise was so good, and I had read another book by this author which was so good, The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, and then this one, disappoint. Another book that I was really looking forward to, and I even put on my 5-star predictions video, was Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman, which is a memoir of a physicist that I admire in his work and life philosophy. And the book was boring and poorly constructed. It was just like a list of unconnected anecdotes, and this book was just such lacking in any connective tissue that it was so hard to get invested or really follow the stories. Then, very big disappointment for the year was The Anatomy of Story. I've started reading more storytelling how-to books, and this is one that I had heard lots of people recommend, and I tried to read it, and like, there were so many things about this book that I hated. So now let's talk about how and where I found my books. And the entire purpose of this is to answer the question of like, what are good ways to find books for me? So here's the breakdown of why I picked up all of the books. 5% of my reading was rereads. 8% was for a project where I have like a list of books I want to read for a video, but there's not another reason why I want to pick them up, it's just they appeared on the list. 6% was a personalized recommendation from either someone who knows me in real life or someone in my comment section gave me a personalized book recommendation. 36% of them were continuing on in a series. 9% of the books were hyped, where I picked them up because I heard a positive review of them that made me think that's a book I'm going to like. 18% of the books came because of a repeat author, where I'd read another one of the author's books before and I was picking up another one. And 18% of the books were just browsing, looking through Goodreads lists and libraries and things like that. So now the deeper question is, what is my average star rating for each of these categories? Which of the categories are successful at finding me books I'm going to like, and which ones are less successful? Obviously, rereads takes the cake with 4.75 average rating. Surprisingly, second runner-up is The Project with a 3.8. Which in the past, Project List has been the lowest rated of all the categories, but this year I had some pretty good projects, and I'll break those down for you later. Next up, we have Personalized Recommendations, also with a 3.8. That is so good, I'm loving it. Then continuing on in a series with a 3.6. Hyped Books gets a 3.0, and this is now bringing down my average score. Repeat Authors, also a 3.0, which is disappointing, and Browsing, a 3.0. I find it interesting how much these numbers have shifted back and forth in the 2.5 years I've been tracking it, so I'd definitely be interested in the future doing more of a deep dive into this data set. For example, in the past, Repeat Author and Browsing have been some of the top rated things, so I think right now I just don't have quite a big enough data set to really make conclusions just looking at the first half of 2024. This also ties into one of my goals where I want to read more personalized book recommendations. Last year, 4.2% of my reading was personalized book recommendations, and this year it's 6.4, so it's going up and they're going well. I'm loving it. I'm also tracking how I received my books, so here's that. 70% of the books were borrowed, typically from the library. 12% of the books I bought, and 18% of the books were given to me for free, typically by the publishers or authors themselves through ARC programs. And I just want to take this moment to give a quick plug for you don't need to buy books if you don't want to buy books. If you want to buy books, like, have fun. That's all in you. But I feel like there's so many corners of the book internet where there's so much pressure for big consumerism. And I just want to be one person out there saying, like, the only books I've bought this year have been ebooks that I could not get at my library, which I really like that system because that means like the only books I end up buying are usually from self-published small authors who need our support much more than the big publishing houses do. And like, there's a reason why I never hold up books in my videos, and that's because like I don't have physical books. So if you want to buy books, go out and buy books. But if you're just feeling like a pressure to own the book because everyone else seems to be owning the books, like, it's fine not to own books. I'm quite happy with my library loans and ebook collection. One of my other goals this year was to get my want to read list on Goodreads down. Starting out 2024, I had, I think, 132 books on my want to read shelf on Goodreads. And personally, I'm happier when this list is lower. I want a manageable number of books that I can easily browse through and choose one. And when this list gets really long, I get overwhelmed of, oh, it's going to take me so long to get around all of these. So my goal is to, by the end of 2024, have this under 100. And I actually got it down to 99 books a few months ago. And then I found a lot of books that I wanted to add up, so it's higher than that now. But I'm currently at 110. And I am pretty happy with that number. I'm on track to getting it stably under 100 by the end of the year. One of the graphs that I love making is this publication year. The x-axis here is the date that I read the book, and then the y-axis here is the year the book was published. So you can see the trends where I definitely read most in the recent years, but I also branch out into the previous decades. Let's quickly run through all of the 2024 releases I've read this year and what I rated them. And I'm going to rank these. Let's start with the books that I liked the least and working our way up to the books that I would most highly recommend. We've got There Is a Door in This Darkness, The Book That Broke the World, The Last Murder at the End of the World, The Familiar, With a Little Luck, Lorne, A Dark and Drowning Tide, The Rom-Commers, Tangled Up in You, Mage Assassins and Other Misfits, Demon Daughter, To the Bloody End, and When Among Crows. So now let's talk about the vibes of the 78 books that I've read this year. Here's the Booktone breakdown of all of the books that I've read. We have hit every single type. This is a reader personality type system that I've designed where every color is a different reader personality type, and you are most likely to like the books that are your type. If you want more information or to take the test, I'll link that all in the footnotes for you. I think the most important thing to know about the test right now is that the colors with blue in them are the character-focused books, and those are the ones that I tend to love the most. So those are the ones that I'm trying to pick up the most. So that's our blues, our purples, our greens, and our grays. And as you can see, I've been pretty good at that. I have picked up some yellows, oranges, and reds, but I've been working hard to try to find books that other people say are character focused, and I think I have been more successful at that. Here is my average rating for every book tone. As you can see, we also trend higher ratings for the books with character focus, the greens, blues, purples, and grays, with my least favorite being yellows, which is only atmosphere world building focused. And I think another interesting thing to show for this data is my 5 stars. So here's the book tones of only my 5 stars. So you can see it's only those character-focused colors. I found 5 stars across all of those character-focused types, but none outside of it so far. And that's just because for me, what is more important than a good plot or good world building is always good character arcs and exploration. And that's just my taste, and you can see it reflected here. Let's also look at the genres of the books I've read this year. So here is the pie chart of all of the genres. Shall we break it down? Sci-fi I've split into 2 subgenres, which is sci-romance with 8% of my reading and other sci-fi books with 13% of my reading. Fantasy I've split into 3 subcategories, which is high fantasy with 15% of my reading, urban fantasy with 37% of my reading. I ended up reading a lot of urban fantasy series so far this year, so that has quite boosted that. And romantasy with 5% of my reading. Romance has 4% of my reading. Historical fiction has 8% of my reading, which is quite a jump up. I'll talk more about that in a minute. Nonfiction has 8% of my reading, and both literary fiction and mystery thriller has 1.3%, a single book. So looking at the average star rating of all of these books, here is the ranking. Going from most liked to least, we have sci-romance, high fantasy, romance, urban fantasy, sci-fi, romantasy, historical fiction, nonfiction, literary fiction, mystery, thriller. One of the things that surprised me was that high fantasy was so high when last year it was lower, and I think a big part of that is I've been more picky about the high fantasy I've been picking up this year. That slice of the pie has decreased. So the ones that I did pick up were ones that I was really excited about. One of my goals this year was to read at least 10 nonfiction books because I haven't read that many in the past, and I want to find the nonfiction books that I can love. So I am on track with that goal of, so far I've read 6, over half. We're halfway through the year, perfect. But the reason for the goal of trying to find nonfiction that I'm loving is not good, because the average star rating is a 2.7, which is below what I typically rate books. So I haven't yet found the nonfiction that I'm really loving, but I'm still exploring around, and hopefully I'll find something that really clicks with me. Now, I want to quickly run through some authors that are new to me this year, and I'm excited about reading more of their books and exploring more. So I'm going to say the author's name and flash up the book that got me excited about their work. We've got C.L. Polk, Everina Maxwell, Mark Lawrence, Catherine Addison, Haley Reese-Chow, Deanna Rayborn, and this is the series that has boosted my historical fiction love because I've been loving the Veronica Speedwell series so far, Sengu Mandana, and Jennifer Estep. So you'll definitely see me picking up more of these authors' works. In some cases I already have. Hopefully they become favorite author candidates. I've got the whole system running. One of my other goals was to keep the number of series that I'm actively in progress with down. These are in progress series that I'm in the middle of reading, that I have access to the next book. I've also got a whole other group of series where I'm waiting for the next release, but I'm caught up. My current active in progress series is 7 books, which is good because that's under 10 for my goal. And then I've got like 20 series where I'm waiting for the next release on. If you would like to see me talk about all of these series, I'm both actively in progress and waiting for the next release. I've got a bonus video that I just made for my patrons where I am ranking all of these series by how excited I am for them. So now I think I want to take a little bit of some meta stats and talk about my video projects, because I've been doing quite a few this year where I have a video that's all centered around a certain challenge project. So let's talk through some of them and their average star ratings. Let's start with the lower rated project, shall we? For reading romantasy by authors I've loved before, average star rating of 2.7. That video did not go super well, but I think that was mostly chance. I do love romantasy, and these were from authors I've loved before. So Then one step up, we have the TBR jar. This is a project I recently started where my patrons submit books to put in the jar, and then I pull one out and I have to read it. So far I've read 3 of those and they've all been 3 stars. So we have an average of 3 stars. I am enjoying this project. It's a very fun moment of suspense to pull something from the jar, and I feel like I'm connecting more with my patrons. I'm liking it, even though I haven't yet gotten a book that I love. But I haven't gotten any books that I've hated either, so. Then we have, and this is quite sad, is my quest for a new favorite author. I've done 2 videos so far where I'm picking out some authors that are so close to becoming an official favorite author, and I'm reading another book from them. And the premise of these videos is these authors are so close to getting that favorite author label that if I just get one more 5-star from them, they will become favorite authors. And the average star rating for these is a 3.2, which is lower than my average. These videos have not been the best for finding books that I love, and I think part of that is the way that I'm picking them is I've got a limited list of authors, and then I'm picking an author, and then I have to go find a book in their backlog that I want to read. But sometimes I'm not super jazzed about reading them. And I think that's part of why so many of these haven't been full successes is because like I'm forcing myself to pick books that I know even going in, like maybe this one isn't for me. I do want to keep doing these quests for a new favorite author videos because they're so fun, but I think I'm going to wait off making the next one until I have 3 books that I'm genuinely excited to read for favorite author candidates. Right now I have, I think, only 1 that I'm really excited to read. So I'm going to save that for the video, and I'm hoping to accumulate more favorite author candidates from like the new authors to me and other authors that I'm reading more books from. And then we will have a even more successful round of favorite author candidates. Hopefully. Wish me luck. Next up, also with an average score of 3.2, is my husband Seth picks the books I read. I read 5 books that he picked out for me, and I loved some of them and didn't love others, but it was a very fun project. And though it is a lower average star rating than my typical, it's pretty close. Then we have No Project, which I put in here because it has an average rating of 3.43. So just to put it in context, the books that I'm reading for No Project at all have beaten the books from all the previous projects. The projects where I'm trying to read those books because I think I'm going to love them. But all of the projects I'm talking about next have been more successful than just No Project at all. So let's talk about those. With an average rating of 3.7, we have Reading Romance Early Releases. I read 3 books from authors that I've loved before. I liked all of them on different levels, loved some of them. There were no standout 5 stars, but it was a fun video to make. Then we have a spotlight on my favorite author, Emma Bull, with an average rating of 4 stars. This is 2 5-star rereads and 1 2-star disappointment in this video. It's very entertaining. I recommend watching it. I enjoyed doing the project, and I'm glad that I've read all of her bibliography now. Then, also with an average rating of 4 stars, we have Nerdy Nat Reads Give Me Book Recommendations. These were fun, and I found a new 5-star in this video. Then, the very cream of the crop, the most successful project I've ever done was reading books that my nemesis hates. I would definitely be interested in doing another round of this. I think I'm going to wait a little while to let my nemesis accumulate more books that he hates. My nemesis is Matt's Fantasy Book Reviews. He's a great booktuber, totally go follow him. The only reason that we're nemesises is because though we read a lot of similar genres, we have like opposite taste in books. So I figured if we have opposite taste in books, I can go read his 1-stars and love them. And you know what? That hypothesis was 100% correct. So very fun. And I'll probably do that again one day. We'll see. Now I want to run through some Goodreads stats. In the opinion of the average star ratings on Goodreads, what are the highest and lowest rated, most popular and least popular books that I've read this year? So, highest rated books, the very highest is Mage Assassins, with an average score of 4.62. This makes sense, it's book 5 in a series, it's a new release, and it was quite good. The runner-up on high ratings is book 1, so even more impressive, with a 4.56, Once We Flew. And third place is Demon Daughter, which is like book 12 in a series, with a 4.55. The very lowest rated book is There Is a Door in This Darkness with 3.74. And here's my rating of it, 2 stars, so yeah, I kind of agree with that. The Last Murder at the End of the World with a 3.76, also a book that I gave 2 stars, and When Among Crows with a 3.80, a book that I not only gave 5 stars, but already have reread because I loved it so much. And this is one of the interesting things to me of like how individual book taste is. I look at 2 of these lowest rated books and I think, yeah, that's about right. And then the third one, I'm like, how dare, that's my baby, I love it. How does everyone hate this book? What? And I'm just like genuinely bamboozled of like, how could someone dislike this one? And the moral of the story is, just because a book has a low average rating doesn't mean it's not going to be your favorite. Maybe the chance of it being your favorite is a little lower, but there's definitely a lot of books that have like a 3.8 that I love with my whole heart. I also calculated a hype score for all of the books that I read this year. This is looking at how many ratings the book has on Goodreads and how long that book has been published. So it's like a ratings per day metric. So these are the top 6 most hyped books I've read this year and what I rated them. With 1.1 million ratings, we have Circe. Also with 1.1 million ratings, we have Becoming. With 201,000 ratings, we have The Ruthless Vows. With 181,000 ratings, we have One Dark Window. With 175,000 ratings, we have A Deadly Education. And with 171,000 ratings, The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. Now, I could also give you the books with the lowest hype score, but that just kind of feels almost like sad. So instead, I'm going to give you the books with the lowest hype score that I would also very much recommend. So these are books that 1, have a low hype score, not enough readers. 2, I loved the book, and 3, it's also the first book in a series. With 5,000 ratings, we have Only Bad Options. With 3,000 ratings, The Grace of Wild Things. With 2,000 ratings, Finder. With 500 ratings, Falcon. With 200 ratings, Into the Churn. And with only 16 ratings, Once We Flew. This is a sci-fi novella. It's short, it's fun, I loved it, and it's got one of the highest average ratings of any of the books I've read this year. And definitely sometimes when a book only has like 16 ratings, the average rating isn't super to be trusted, but I would say for this one, like, it deserves it. I love this book and I think other people will too. So those are all the stats that I have prepared of the books that I've read so far in 2024. Let me know if you have any questions about these or any stats you'd like to see on my next stat extravaganza video. Thank you so much for watching, and if you loved this video, I highly recommend watching another one of my stats videos like this one.